To understand what Red Candle Games is trying to achieve with their newest title, there's a need to be familiar with what they achieved with their premiere game Detention, a side-scrolling horror adventure game that was released in 2017. Taking place in a haunted school, Detention is a comprehensive commentary on the real-life horrors that the country Taiwan was subjected to in the 60s. The period of time it explores is typically referred to as the White Terror, in which thousands of Taiwanese people were enslaved and executed for their perceived opposition of the Chinese Nationalist Party. Before playing Detention, I had no knowledge of this calamity. Obviously, with the internet, I have had access to the knowledge of these events for years, but it wasn't until I was stepping down the game's unsettling psychological set of stairs that it taught me and confronted me with this human tragedy and my ignorance of it. As more and more information about the domestic events that the country was facing at the time is introduced, Wei Chongting and Feng Ruixin, the school children who are the main characters in Detention, get gradually subjected to an increasingly warped and dangerous version of their own environments, creating an emotional and esoteric experience for the player as they discover more about the struggles of the main characters. Red Candle Games' follow-up, Devotion, is an also seminal horror game. Unlike many other games of its type, the title has a considerable amount of cultural subtext that is placed primarily over jump scares or gratuitous violence. Sure, it has its scary moments and chillingly morbid occasions, and it's currently being review bombed by Chinese Steam users due to a statement about the nation's president Xi Jinping, but this is an aside to the real value found within Devotion, one that comes from understanding and comprehending the nuanced statements that Red Candle Games is consistently making about their home country. Devotion is a title which takes place in the 80s, and rather than being a side-scroller, is under the same format as many other popular horror games, with a first-person perspective that's similar to Amnesia, Outlast, or Layers of Fear. Yet despite this difference in format, Devotion is cut from the same cloth as Detention, with intentions to challenge the player with the scars that humanity wears, whether that is explored on a societal level or an individual level. The game delves into the psychological aspects of broadcast television and the film industry, as the main character is Du Fengyu, an award-winning writer in show business, and his wife, Feng, is a prominent actor. As you progress through the game, which is a non-linear narrative that has you going through the same house over different years, there's the same pattern that was found within Detention, as details of the society that Du Fengyu lives in are revealed and revelations of his own character flaws gradually intensify alongside factors of horror. Yet the genius of Devotion is found within this non-linear form of storytelling, as the house shows increasing development through the various time jumps that the player subjects themselves to within the game. For example, in one of the earlier years, Du Feng and Li Feng are moving into the house, organizing their furniture, portraits, and trophies onto empty walls and bookshelves. This puzzle design is fascinating, as the gameplay is contextual with the story rather than an attempt to pad out the game's length. At some points, you're hanging photos of Li Feng's various photo shoots on walls, or sometimes you're assembling the X-ray of Mei Xin like a jigsaw. The sound design in Devotion is also excellent, as ambient noises unique to each year contribute to the overall atmosphere. It's highly suggestible that this game is played with headphones, as the 3D audio work is meticulously designed. Another factor of the game's production that is unique to each year is with the distinct lighting variations of the environment, utilizing a variety of warm colors to set a specific tone for each of the various encounters. Collectibles in the game are purposeful as well, across photographs, various childhood scribbles, and even television scripts that detail and flesh out the Shin family. This all plays into the factor that the story is the strongest part of the game, and that the heart of the story comes from the familial dynamic. Each of the three central characters get the progression and details that they deserve, going through various arcs via the numerous details that you learn over the years. With Devotion, it's evident that you can learn a lot about a person just from reading a to-do list for shopping, an essay a child writes for school, or the ramblings of a dissatisfied wife. However, the quality of horror shouldn't be understated, as the game has the typical ghosts and various scary monsters you expect from a title such as this. Yet there are also life-size woodblock figures adorning the house in certain pass-throughs, recreating various events that the family has been through. The terror comes from how the inanimate objects follow the logic that should your back be turned on them, they will be in different places than they were before, much like the weeping angels in Doctor Who. And sometimes they're looking directly at you or adorning weapons. This factor is one of the many surprises in the game that create a uniquely unsettling experience, attributing to the game's overall effort to be a mood piece. This moodiness, though, is juxtaposed with a tragic and socially critical story, as it's revealed that when Du Fengyu had lost his job as a writer, he pressured his wife to drop out of show business. Of course, devoted to Du Fengyu, she dropped out of her career in order to support her husband without question. Du Fengyu then subjects his daughter, Mei Xin, into being a star and forces her into participation in a singing competition. This event is seen as a broadcast in-game, as a coherent replication of the style that was found in programs during the times is utilized, and the effects that are used to resemble a CRT television alongside the FMV cutscenes makes for a riveting experience. Mei Xin fails this competition and is subjugated to parental neglect and various other forms of abuse from her father. Upon her diagnosis of depression from a doctor, mental illness is a plague among Taiwanese children culturally, the parents fall into denial and ignorance, much like many other parents do in this situation in this country, when learning of the mental issues that their children have, with just enough information being withheld and a 3-hour playthrough to keep someone engaged in completing the experience in one sitting. So to fix his marriage and save his child, Du Fengyu thought that it would be best to turn to religion. Propositioned by a scam artist named Hugh, Du Fengyu's remaining assets are siphoned with the promise that his daughter would be cured by a god that he vows to worship. Eventually, Li Feng leaves her daughter and husband upon the realization that Du Fengyu has succumbed to a manipulative cult and promises that as soon as she's able to raise enough money, she will take Mei Xin back to be under her care. Du Fengyu falls into his own madness and ambitions, and eventually his daughter's mind deteriorates within the absence of her mother. He is then instructed by Hugh to perform a ritual which will save her, in which he places Mei Xin in a bathtub full of snake wine and locks the door without unlocking it within 7 days. Oblivious to the consequences of his ego, Du Fengyu murders his daughter, revealing that the repetitious cycles that the player finds themselves in are Du Fengyu's personal hell. A limbo in which he has to relive the poor decisions he has made. Again, while every puzzle and facet of devotion is played directly into the story, the game's primary mechanic is revealed in this twist to also be involved. Red Candle Games manages to create with devotion a statement on the country's flaws with family dynamics, perceptions of mental illness, and egocentric citizens in under a 3-hour experience. Factors which are not unique to the country and are a more direct criticism of the human race. Conclusively, all good horror is rooted in exceptional storytelling, and the purposeful narrative in Devotion is going to set an example for horror games to come. Making the competition seem as shallow as a puddle, the game is giving players the opportunity to have a deeply gratifying experience thanks to how it speaks to cults, commercialism, and especially our own human selfishness and desires. These confrontations are more terrifying than any ghost or ghoul that the game could have offered. Red Candle Games is ultimately pushing the medium of video games in ways not many other companies are. Hey guys, I just wanted to thank you again for watching till the end of this video. I also want to thank all my patrons who are currently backing me on patreon.com. Watch as their names slide down from here or here. Who knows where they're coming from. Anyway, also big thank you to Megamonse, who's backed me on a producer's level, so be sure to check out her Instagram, which is down in the description below. These videos legitimately would not be possible without her, so a huge thank you. Make sure that you subscribe to this channel or like it, or give me some comments with some feedback. What did you like about this? What did you not like? What points should you thought that I should have focused on more, Mr. English teacher? I'll get you someday. Anyway, thank you again for watching. Bye.